Greetings and salutations, boils and ghouls. It is I, your host of Supreme Insufferableness, Mr. Sean, and welcome back to another episode on Chimera Miniatures' official YouTube channel. We're back today with another episode of RPG Horror Stories. We're going to read a few posts from the r/RPG Horror Stories subreddit and then finish off with one of my own stories. I use this channel to help pitch my business, Chimera Miniatures, where I offer RPG miniatures, repainted HeroClix, and of course, not safe for work miniatures. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. The more videos this gets to, the more minis I can sell, the more videos I can make. Also, if you have a story you'd like me to share on my channel, please go to my own subreddit, r/Mr. Sean Reads Stories. Doesn't have to be an RPG story, it can be any kind of story, but hey, if you post it there, I might read it here. And if you want to be one of my favorite people of all time, please go to my eBay page, links in the description, and purchase a mini. If you tell me that you found my site through this channel, I'll give you a shout out on the next video. And so without further ado, let's get to today's RPG Horror Stories. Our first story comes from user Atomic Retard and is entitled DM Bait and Switches D&D Night for Board Game Night. First off, I would like to say that I don't have any ill intention towards DM, as we have been friends for a long time in case he reads this. Over the pandemic, I joined a dungeon crawl campaign hosted by someone I used to play in real life with in high school. He hosted board games, Warhammer, Magic the Gathering, and tabletop role-playing games at his garage every Saturday. The campaign generally progressed well. About a month or so ago, DM indicates to the group that he misses board games and that his IRL board game group disbanded during COVID and for whatever reason did not get back together. Leaving him without a current outlet, he asks if people in the D&D campaign are up for trying to play some board games online. Unfortunately, there was not much interest in online board games in the group. Personally, I was never that into board games. Sessions are played once every other week. This week's session, the party wanders into a hall with a large table in the middle. As soon as we enter, the doors slam shut. After doing some investigation, we find a riddle about Road to Victory, and that will clear the way written on the table. Inside the table, we, of course, find a board game that is not Catan. We eventually deduce that in order to open the doors, we would need to win the board game using the longest road victory condition. One of the PCs asks if we're doing a gaming set check to see if we can do it or how long it takes us. DM replies no, and moves us to a new Roll20 map, where he has basically set up a not Catan board. He tells us we will need to play out the game to pass the puzzle, and proceeds to explain Roll20 decks and link us to the not Catan rules. I haven't played Catan in more than a decade, and am no longer familiar with the rules. One of the other players has never played, so we have to take an extensive break to go over the rules. I asked him why he thinks we would want to play not Catan when no one was interested in board game night, and if he would reconsider his position on a gaming set check. His position that this was a legitimate D&D puzzle and shouldn't be bypassable with just a check. He also informs us that he's spent the last 2 weeks prepping a few board games for Roll20 and giving them a fantasy reskin, and that this is all the content he has prepared for the session. At this point I excused myself, honestly a bit stunned that he would think this would be appropriate. I understand not wanting to run D&D anymore and or wanting to play board games, but come on. Okay, so I can really see both sides on this one. My D&D group actually did begin its life as a board game group, so we used to get together, we would play Zombicide, we'd play party games, we'd play Cards Against Humanity, whatever. One of my favorites being Betrayal at House on the Hill is also a good one. Honestly, we called ourselves a board game group, but really we were just a bunch of friends who happened to get together and hang out. One time we did a video game tournament. Sometimes we just get together and watch television. It was actually watching an episode of Community that got the group to go, hey, we should try D&D. And in all honesty, we don't play those board games nearly as much anymore. In fact, certain members have come and gone from the group, and I do kind of miss the board games from time to time. But that's not to say that we don't, break out the board games every so often and just have a normal night of fun. But the thing is that we as a group come to the decision of what we want to do together. This guy really this DM, not the OP, missed playing board games, and I totally get that. But what he forgot, and what a lot of times these stories involve, is forgetting about consent. He started off great. He asked if anybody would be willing to have a board game night. But here's the thing, he got the answer no. And yeah, that can be frustrating. But where he messed up was then just shanghaiing them into a board game night, especially because he didn't even bother to make sure it was a game they all knew and even potentially enjoyed. I, for one, absolutely hate Settlers of Catan. It is my least favorite board game. I would rather do anything else than play it. When my old group of friends used to get out the Catan board, I would go do something else while they were playing the game and then rejoin them once it was done, because I could not think of a more awful game to play, and I wouldn't be having fun, and therefore they also wouldn't be having fun, so we just would separate for about an hour wherever we were hanging out. I'd play a video game or something, and then we'd all get back together and we'd play the next game. So you didn't bother to make sure it was a game they'd even liked, and two, they showed up fully expecting to play D&D that they all enjoy, and that's not what you gave them. You gave them what you wanted to do. It's like planning a party for your friend, but making it at a place you want to go to, which I had a roommate do that for my birthday party one year. If you're feeling burnt out on D&D and you miss your board games, yeah, maybe this group doesn't want to play board games, but maybe you can find something else to do and, recharge your batteries, maybe find a couple other people willing to find an online board game community where you can do that, but be honest, be open with your communication, and don't try to force other people just to do what you want to do. Also, if you're forcing them to play Catan and the only way to win is to get the longest road victory condition, they're not really going to be playing the game anyway. They're just going to be working towards building the longest road, so that's not even like a proper game of Catan. Like, I don't like Catan, but you clearly do, DM, so why would you want them to play a bad version of it? Again, it's, nothing against either side. I totally get why DM was burnt out. I think he made a bad call, and I totally get why the OP didn't agree. Our next story comes from user Snowy Zombie and is entitled, "I Can't Believe It's Not Therapy."
Content warning for a very dark suggestion from a player character. PC badgers an NPC paladin into a relationship with her. PC meets a cute NPC bard and hooks up with him while long distance with the first. She returns home, meets with the paladin, tries to convince him she can have 2 boyfriends. He says no, but genuinely wishes her well. She proceeds to gaslight and berate him for not being willing to share. He gets depressed. She decides her best option is to call up a local super powerful mage, ask what options she has, and of the options presented, decides that the adapted 3.0 spell from Book of Vile Darkness, Mind Rape, is the best path. She thought rewriting her Paladin X to be polyamorous was an acceptable thing to do. Before we claim player/character differences, we brought this up out of character, and said it was kind of fucked up that her nominally good character would do this. She got confused and said, "It's like therapy."
Alright guys, I was not familiar with this spell, so let's look it up here real quick. Alright, looks like it's a 9th level spell. The caster enters the mind of a creature, learning everything that creature knows. The caster can erase or add memories as she sees fit and alter emotions, opinions, and even alignment. When the caster is done, she can leave the creature insane, as described in the insanity spell, or seemingly unaffected, without any memory of the intrusion. Severe changes to personality and changes to alignment can be corrected by a break enchantment spell, although an atonement spell might be needed as well, depending on circumstances. Alterations to memories and subtler thoughts can be restored only through the use of a miracle or wish. So, first of all, let's just talk about how weird it is for somebody to think that it's okay to just try and make someone polyamorous, even in a fantasy. That's just fucking weird. I know people who are polyamorous. I also know someone who was more or less someone tried to coerce them into being polyamorous, and it's not okay. It's not okay. Okay, polyamory is okay if you are willingly polyamorous, but you can't just make somebody polyamorous. This isn't real, but it goes along the same lines as saying that the anime character that you like that is a child, it's okay because she's not real, so you can be sexually attracted to the drawing. It's still fucking weird. You still have this fantasy that is inappropriate. And for a character, even if you're playing fantasy, the idea is that if you're playing a good character, then everything that character does should be your interpretation, at least to an extent, of good. And so, in this person's mind, just gaslighting, berating someone until they agree to polyamory isn't problematic, and unless you're playing literally an evil party, and it's just chaos reigns and we're going to be as horrific as we think we can be, then it really doesn't make you look good as a person to bring this into your game. Also, for a good character to want to use any spell from the Book of Vile Darkness is nuts. I found that book at Half Price Books. I haven't really used it in my campaign yet, but oh dear God, some of the stuff in there. Fantasies tell us more about people than some people care to realize or believe, and I'd worry about this person if they were to get into a relationship, because it sounds like they're the ones that need therapy. Our next story comes from user Dinny and is called Scanlan Ripoff argues that grape isn't grape if the victim enjoys it.
Open wide, kids, because I'm gonna grape you in the mouth!
He's going to what them in the mouth?
He's gonna grape them.
He's going to grape them.
Yeah, in the mouth.
Right.
Guys, this one is classified as not safe for work. This lovely little tale happened over lockdown, online via a D&D Discord server. Trigger warning, heavy discussion of SA. I joined a D&D Discord server where people just chill, talk about D&D builds, and shoot the shit. Very casual. About 6 of us would regularly pop into voice chat to meme around. We always had funny conversations with each other and got along well. The 6 of us decided to do a D&D campaign together, a casual 5e Curse of Strahd. We agreed collectively that we can meme and go Monty Python in the campaign. Relevant characters include me playing a Tempest Cleric Storm Sorcerer, DM, chill dude, first time DMing, means well, and regrets not jumping in earlier, Scanlan. Critical Role Ripoff. Player literally describes himself as Scanlan Shorthall, but a half-elf and hot. Boasts that he is Scanlan done right. Honestly kind of a red flag, but since we were doing a Monty Python fun game and our artificer was a Tony Stark knockoff, it went under the radar. Paladin. The only female player in the group. Remember this piece of information for later. Unfortunately, it is important. Artificer and Fighter. They aren't the stars of the story, but they are here.
And the rest are here on Gilligan's Island.
The whole thing happened over Session 0. We did some ground rules, expectations, explaining homebrews and all that jazz. Me, Fighter, and Paladin all mutually agreed that sexual assault was not something that we were comfortable with, and DM promised not to go into that territory. Remember this piece of information. It is important for later. Near the end of Session 0, we decided to do a little combat and some RP. We did an easy save the village from goblin scenario to test out our builds and see if we wanted to change some things before we started the campaign for real. All went well, the goblins got murdered and the villagers got saved. They threw a party for us at the local tavern and we RP'd with our characters for a bit. Scanlan did the stereotypical bard thing and seduced a village girl. Nothing wrong yet, even though it was supposed to fade to black, another thing we all agreed on. Scanlan asked the DM if he can bang her till she passes out. DM awkwardly laughs and agrees. Asks Scanlan to roll a constitution save. He clears and village girl passes out in bliss. A little awkward, but everyone was more or less okay, since he didn't give any graphic details. But then, Scanlan says this. I bring her downstairs and leave the bitch out on the table for others to use her. There's an uncomfy pause and Paladin politely tells him that since the village girl is unconscious, it would be SA if anyone uses her. Scanlan argues that it wouldn't be SA because he left her nice and sensitive and she would enjoy it. Now we're all feeling crazy uncomfy right now. Paladin again reiterates that the village girl is unconscious. It don't matter if her body likes it or not. Scanlan fires back that real SA doesn't feel good. Villager is going to feel good, so it's not SA. The back and forth argument turns ugly when Scanlan starts screaming abuse at Paladin, and ends when she audibly lets out a sob. DM finally gets off his ass and kicks Scanlan from the group call. There is a very awkward silence as Paladin is sniffling and trying to get herself composed. I felt super guilty for not saying anything. I'm a very awkward person when confrontations happens, and I just tend to shut down. Not to get too personal, DM breaks the silence and apologizes for not stepping in sooner because he was feeling shocked and didn't know how to react. The rest of us guys also apologize for not stepping in, citing that we also felt uncomfortable and awkward as the conversation went on and didn't know how to react. She said it was fine and that she wanted to hop off and decompress for a bit. We ended the session right there. But don't worry, there is a happy ending. We all got together and each sent a page-long report against Scanlan. He was publicly shamed in the announcements of the Discord group and perma-banned for all time. The server owners encouraged everyone in the group to stick him onto their ban list. Paladin stated that she wanted to try again because she liked everyone and didn't want the game to end before it started just because of one asshole. We added a female warlock to the group and started the campaign. It ended recently and it was a very good 2-year campaign, one of the funniest I ever played. It's kind of amazing how much the anonymity of the internet gives people what they think is a right to bad behavior. I get that it was all supposed to be lighthearted and everything was just a joke, bro, but you are still playing with people. There are sensitive topics you had already discussed. There wasn't supposed to be any essay in the campaign, and this guy decided that his own personal views on what constitutes that is what everyone else must also believe, which is weird because that is not a common view of essay. And whether you agree with that definition or not, you probably should be smart enough to realize that not everybody is going to share that sentiment, and it's probably not good to be that for that to be your hill to die on. It's also one of those things that, yes, I can admit that I used to find jokes like that funny. I mean, we all did back in the early 2000s, in the 90s. If you watched an early Family Guy episode, there are nothing but grape jokes.
Hi, I'm Kelly McGillis, and I'm here to talk to you about rape. Ladies, look to your left. Now look to your right. Statistics indicate that both of those men will rape you.
I'm not gonna rape you.
I might.
I mean, there's at least one in almost every episode. But, times change, ideas change. What is acceptable will ebb and flow, and it's also just with you're in an online community, or any community, it's important to know what other people's boundaries are, and to respect them. I will say that DM and OP and the other players, other than Paladin, are not blameless in this, though. Look at the language OP uses, how he makes a point of saying that Paladin is the only girl, and that's important for later. This isn't that, we just have to be polite and not talk about these kind of things in front of the women folk. You need to know, men can be essayed too. Men can have hang-ups about stuff like this. Anybody can. I would bet that Scanlan thought this was okay because of the dynamic of the other guys in the group, and that's why he fought so hard. He thought all of you would have his back, and the fact that none of you were stepping in at all other than Paladin, it's not because she's a woman. It's clear that she has some strong feelings, whether she herself was essayed or somebody she knew was, but all the rest of you were uncomfortable, but you did nothing. You all failed to foster a safe environment for everybody where people's boundaries are not being stepped on. The fact that you all claimed awkwardness and being uncomfortable, the fact that none of you stepped in to say that this wasn't okay until Paladin broke down in tears, and then you all, oh no, the woman's crying, you all puffed up your chest and found your courage. No, you guys are cowards. Except for Paladin, everybody, if this was Am I the A-hole, it would be on Everyone Sucks Here. Also, as much as I love Critical Role, and I love Scanlan, I think that the horny bard trope is way overused. I mean, literally you can be a horny anything in D&D. It shouldn't be that, oh, I'm a bard, just because you have high charisma. Like, my ultimate concept for a bard is I want to make a guy who is essentially a snake oil salesman who interacts with people like Harold Hill from The Music Man.
May I have your attention, please? Attention, please. I can deal with the troubled friends with a wave of my hand, this very hand. Please observe me if you will. I'm Professor Harold Hill, and I'm here to organize a River City Boys band.
I mean, sure, he might flirt with a woman or two, but ultimately, his whole motivation is greed. But ultimately, this story also just shows how problematic people can be, because again, this is fantasy. This isn't real. You're playing that free of actual consequences of your actions. What would you attempt to do? And this guy decided to go all Brock Turner on a fictitious woman, and that speaks a lot about him, that he finds that funny, whether he would actually do so in real life if given the chance. That's just not an attitude you want to make public. If you feel that, bury that deep down. The fact that he proudly proclaimed this and thought that everybody would be cool with it, and then argued his point when he got called out, this guy has issues. Our next story today comes from Dungeon Hardware and is entitled, My Players Forced Me to Write Erotica on the Spot for the Campaign.
For the record, this is not something that I'm annoyed about. I just thought it would be the best place to post this. So my players, party of 4, D&D 5e, 9th level, defeated a Rakshasa. They decided to loot his room, and as a joke, I told them his bookshelf is mostly smutty fiction. My players are amused by this and decide to take 12 of the books with them. Now, I just said they were erotica as an offhand joke, not anticipating for my players to want to read them and then sell them on the black market, authoritarian regime, so I spent a good 20 minutes of play writing the titles and plots of fantasy erotica novels on the spot. This was in retrospect hilarious, but not as serious of a horror story as others here, and certainly mortified me in the moment.
Guys, this is an excellent example of what I like to call yes and DMing, much like improv. If the players decide that they want to latch on to something that you said, even in passing, it's best as the DM to find a way to incorporate that.
Well, I may as well give them what they want.
Because you never know what's going to get them interested in the campaign, so if they latch onto something, go with it. Honestly, I would have said that you'd get to the books later though, and I would have gone online and found some terrible smutty fan fiction and just replaced the names, printed it out, and then given it to them as the books the next time. I went to an anime con about a year ago, and we went to this thing called So You Think You Can Fanon, which is apparently, they also have a podcast where they just read terrible fan fiction, and I'll be honest, after that, going to that panel, I can't look at Thomas the Tank Engine, Lightning McQueen, Kirby, or Dante from the Devil May Cry franchise the same way ever again. So yeah, that would have been how I did it, but good on you, DM, for going with the flow and giving the people what they want. For our final story today, we're going to head on over to r/Mr. Sean Reads Stories and find a story by user Chimera Miniatures. Hey, that's me, and it's entitled The Story of Shirté. This story comes from the first campaign I DM'd for 5e. The brother of one of my players decided to join the party. He had attended several board game nights with our group before and wanted to give TTRPGs a try. He was very enthusiastic but had little understanding at first. He got mildly creative, making a fighter barbarian multi-class, but couldn't think of a name. Due to some joking at the table that his character probably looked like Fabio with his shirt ripped open, he decided to name his character Shirt, then quickly gussied it up to be Shirté. He learned quickly how to play his character well, and even gave advice on how to better utilize the fighter barbarian class when another player joined and made a similar concept. While competent, Shirté would have been an utterly forgettable character had it not been for an event that occurred during the final session of the campaign. It was not intended to be the final session, merely a shopping episode, in between the group defeating a major boss in the campaign, an ancient black vampire dragon, and before heading off towards the BBEG of the campaign. Sadly, due to scheduling conflicts that were making it harder and harder to have a session, this would be the last one of this campaign. Shirté was walking around town trying to find a place to buy a specific item. I honestly don't remember what. And in his search, he happened upon a villager that I made up on the spot. I really didn't plan out the shopping sessions much beforehand. This villager was a woolly pig farmer named Tiberius and was, by all accounts, a total hipster. Unbeknownst to me, Shirté's player hated hipsters. In an act of murder hoboism so far unseen in the campaign, Shirté murdered Tiberius and fed him to his pigs. Several skill checks later, it was determined that no one had seen Shirté commit this act and he had successfully disposed of all the evidence and covered up the crime. The next day, he is walking by the area again and sees the town guard talking to an attractive young woman. This was Tiberius's wife, Thistle, I doubled down on the hipster names, talking to the guard about her husband's mysterious disappearance. Since at this point we were running on pure chaos, Shirté decides to attempt to console the woman, and again, several skill checks later, has seduced her. Since we ended up ending the campaign after this session, I decided to write a little epilogue for Shirté, and after getting approval from his player, read it aloud to the group at our next hangout. Shirté took Thistle as his wife, adopting her 2 children, young boy and girl, who he renamed Shorté and Skirté. And he took over the woolly pig business. Eventually, he and Thistle had their own child together, a baby boy named Onesie. We have since started a new campaign, 2 if you count the one that fizzled after 3 sessions for just not being the right style for all of us. I tried something new, and it failed. While the current campaign is in a completely different setting, I do sometimes throw in shoutouts to our first one. Everyone chuckles when Shirtesian pork, the finest pork in all the realms, comes up in conversation. And guys, that is going to be our video for today. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you can't think of a comment, just put the comment "grape joke" in the comments so that I know you got all the way to the end. Before we go, I wanted to showcase some of my newest miniatures. I recently purchased a Dremel tool to help me do that, and I think the results are pretty great. The first piece I wanted to showcase, I call him the Warlord. He is made with no less than 9 different miniatures. He's got kind of a weird mix of Viking and Druid and just Tyrant vibes, and I'm pretty proud of him. It took me a while to make him. Right here we have one I like to call the Creature from the Scrap Lagoon. He's kind of a cyborg Gillman type guy. He has been cobbled together from 3 different miniatures. And finally, this one is from my Not Safe for Work HeroClix line. I pieced her together out of 3 different HeroClix miniatures, and this is in what I like to call Lara Croft Victorious. She's a little banged up. She's crawled her way through the tomb, has emerged victorious with this ruby gem in her hand. She might need to sell it to buy some new outfits, because hers is a little more revealing than it started out. All 3 of these are available for sale on my eBay page, so feel free to go ahead and check those out. As always, I want to thank you so much for joining me on the channel today, and until next time, I hope you alpha great day and an even beta tomorrow. Bye-bye!